boys and girls. Today is going to be a review of a fairly inexpensive cigar. And Brian Glenn just reviewed this. And so I went and bought some at my local store because I saw a little 3-pack of them. It's about $9 for 3 of these things. It's JM's Nicaraguan cigar. Probably seen this. So I thought I'd just add another opinion to this. I'm not going to try to get all fancy with the review. I'm just going to smoke it and tell you what I think about it. I've had really almost no luck with cheap cigars, but I'm dying to have a good one. And when he reviewed this, people jumped on board and said, "Man, this is one of the greatest smokes for the money." So we'll give it a try here. It's pretty dry out of the bag. I just bought these, so this will be the dry review. So we'll see what happens here. We'll know whether or not it's all right, even if it is a little bit dry. Now, what I've experienced with these cheap ones is that they're made from floor clippings, and so you just have a bunch of loosely packed tobacco. Typically comes off in your mouth when you're smoking. They are very dry. They're blocked often. But I had a Vegas that came in a sampler from, I don't know, it wasn't Brian Glenn stuff, but it was blocked like crazy. So it's like, man, once you get a blocked cigar and you've paid, $7-8 for it, your likelihood of ever going back to that brand, unless you had a good one before that, is negligible. So the day I spend money to buy a Vegas will be a long day away from today, which is probably unfortunate. Here we go. Now, what I usually have with these cheaper cigars is you do get more of a grassier tobacco flavor. You don't get the butters. You don't get a lot of leather, any of that kind of stuff, sort of the softer flavors. This is not bad. This is like a good tobacco, And again, if you don't like tobacco, I guess you probably shouldn't smoke cigars in the first place, right? We get all spoiled with these amazing blends from Drew Estate and what have you. Yeah, it's like a real pleasant, sort of a more, how do I describe this? There is a major difference between this and like a $8 cigar, like you have a Punch or a Romeo and Juliet, but smoke output's amazing, as you can see. That's a really pleasant and just core tobacco flavor. Very, very nice. It's definitely going to leave that, this particular flavor, so far no pepper or anything. It's just a really good core tobacco flavor. It's not like the smooth tobacco you might get from a First Third, right? The CO First Third. But, I forgot to call out all the stuff here. Let's see, I think this is at least, I think maybe is that a triple cap? I got it wet, so I'm not sure what I'm looking at here. I think, there's a cap on the end. Well, it's at least a double. I think it's just a double cap. It's kind of organically put on here, so it doesn't have a cap. It has the nice, perfectly circular lines on it, sort of like a nice zigzaggy, which is perfectly cool. I actually think it's more cool to have it organically put on the end. But let me try it again here. I was going to make a point about flavor in 1 sec. Yeah, that's it's just clean. I mean, it's just when you get done with a cigar, and the aftertaste that you have at the very, very end, and is sort of an indicator of what kind of cigar that you had. And there's some of us that love to go down to the nub. I'll go down, and on a good cigar, I will definitely go down, this about right here where the band ends, if you're going from front to back. But on a cheap cigar, every once in a while I will toss them down about halfway through if I feel like I'm getting a really kind of oily tobacco flavor. And this has a bit of a maybe oily is what it is. It's sort of an oily tobacco. Not terrible or anything, especially for $2.50 or whatever this thing is. Not a problem at all, And this is right out of the retail, packet where you tear off the thing. There's 3 of them inside. I was going to show it to you guys, but I got it in my humidor. And it's a good Churchill size. I don't think the gauge. This is probably like a 48, I think, gauge on this thing. But it's standard Churchill size, whatever the hell that is. I'll get this stuff figured out one of these days. I'm smoking it a bit quicker because I want to kind of inundate myself with the flavor on sort of a very intense scale, so I can maybe get a little more of the description out to you. Not much to it so far. I don't imagine there's any concept of a transition in a cigar like this, but we might be surprised. The construction's good. It's burning well, I mean, it's only half an inch or quarter inch or whatever, but so far, so good. You'll notice that the tip here, we'll see what happens with this. I don't get so worried when cigars have little anomalies. The only one that's the anomaly that I've had that's other than a block, like my Vegas had just a stick in the middle. It was just like smoking wood. I tried to cut it up and save it, and it just wasn't behaving. And I got some Indian cigars. I forgot which, the Indian company that makes the cheapy cigars. And my very first one I pulled out was a huge block, and those things were like hay sticks. And the funny thing was, I bought them, smoked a couple, and then I looked back at Brian Glenn's review, and he was dead on about how it tasted, and he got one that performed really well for him. But I almost think we need to have one of us out here reviewing these cigars in a more critical nature, instead of just trying to be friendly all the time. Oh, well, it's pretty good, but it tastes like a turd, So I told myself when I was going to review this that I was like, if this really sucks, we're just going to go for it and call it out. But this is a fine smoke, I'd say, to be honest with you, because I have 3 cigars that I actually purchased at a local drugstore, Walgreens, that we have out here, because they're now selling them in these little packets, And one's the classic Macanudo, one's a classic, I forget which Romeo and Juliet it is. I think it's a 1965. I think that's the year, but the other one's a Punch. And you have obviously your Macanudo, which is the smooth, mild cigar. And they got them down almost $8 now, which is kind of nice. It's usually like 12 at your smoke shop, which is absurd for a cigar that's so mild. It's a good, beautiful, mild smoke. Your second one down, for me, is the Romeo and Juliet that they sell. A little more strength. They all kind of have their monotone body. There's no real big transitions. And then you have your Punch. And your Punch is the one that will knock you on your ass if you haven't had anything to eat or something like that. And if you haven't smoked in a while, I've definitely felt a little dizzy at the end of a Punch if I go too far down on the nub. But the constructions of those 3 in those little packets are fantastic. I've never had one wobble. In fact, it's been almost utterly immaculate burns with those cheapy cigars. So I'm going to tell you right now, this taste is really sort of between a Romeo and Juliet and a Punch, in terms of its bite and its kind of signature of tobacco. So it's a bit more of a different flavor right there. Hang on. Yeah. Retrohale, actually, I just pushed out a huge cloud through Retrohale. I usually don't do that, but I'm trying to really inundate myself. Retro Hill actually pulled out the flavors in this thing nicely. I don't know. This is actually, what I was going to say about the whole thing with smoking these other cigars and these cheap ones is that I think that our dream cigar, I think, if you want a really cheapy one, unless you're just one of these guys who likes Maduros and really, really deep, full strength cigars, is our dream would be to have a Macanudo and get it for like $2. Something super duper mild. It's like a Connecticut wrapper. You just pound them out. You don't get high or anything. Sip your coffee or whatever. And I think that's what we're all looking for, most of us, with a cheap cigar. So when you get a cheapie and it's a little bit stronger than your mild Macanudo, I think that's where we kind of go, oh boy, it's not that great. I think too, there's a presence attack with these cheap cigars that we're looking for, and just for my aesthetic, this label here is very, very minimalistic, and hats off to them. They're making a product they have to make affordable, but the I wonder if you took this cigar, and you slapped on a fancy label and you called it a punch and you whatever, if somehow psychologically we would be convinced that this thing is actually better than it really is. Right? I don't know. Because the construction's great. You would never suspect with the construction so far that you're smoking anything less than just a really nice cigar. And the ash so far, which is obviously really short, is super duper packed. I just saw Brian Glenn use that expression. I thought, oh yeah, that's the way to say that. Yeah. So far so good. And you watch me just talk there for 2 minutes or whatever. And did you see the smoke come off that thing? It's like the cherry's in here and it's beautifully burning. It's good. It's good. How do you like that? I'm going to use big Steve Jobs words. I think I get a coffee on top of the tobacco. This is starting to smooth out a little bit. Like I said, that tip, you can't really smoke the tip of a cigar. Let's just say half an inch. Let's just make a little rule here. For the first half inch, we don't know what the hell we're smoking. And if you do a Drew Estate, Herrera Stella, or a CO, and you hit that beautiful first pull on it, then you're definitely dealing with a premium cigar. But let's just say for these less expensive ones, or one that's been pulled out of the packet 2 seconds ago and it's still not quite, as humidified as it should be. And this isn't bad. This isn't dry or anything. The tip was a little dry, and when I cut it, it sort of sounded like eating Pringles. But yeah, wow, yeah, that just totally smoothed out there, and the tobacco lightened up and miled it out just then. I'm starting to understand why people like these. Very nice. Let me just tell you right now. Okay, I bought a sample of those Indian cigars, and I forgot what they're called. It's almost like the Indian Tea Company or something, but it's not that. But it's a huge bundle. I ended up throwing most of them away, and I've never thrown away a cigar in my life. The other one was a Cohiba pack for like $30. It must have had like 25 cigars in this little block thing at my humidor place, and they were so freaking dry. I tried to humidify them up. I ended up smoking them all, but they were absolutely floor clippings. Like when you looked into the cut, it was just these pieces would constantly fall out while you were smoking them, and they were cheapy Cohibas, right? I don't know what the deal. It's not like the normal Cohiba, but very grassy, very tarry, very just tough to smoke. I mean, I had to be hard up to smoke one, and it's usually like when I do a premium in the morning or something like that. I might grab a cheapy one just to kind of tide me over at night. And the other thing is that I didn't finish a lot of the Cohibas. I just throw them down half smoked. But it was never really a pleasant experience at the end, you know. And so far, this one is really proving to be a notch way ahead of those other ones I've had. Yeah, that's nice. Now, I have done a lot of other cheapy cigars that my liquor store. I've got a liquor store. It's got a little humidor in the back, and the guy smokes himself, who owns a place. So it's got a lot of nice ones. I get my Levas there, and I get Max and Rocky Patels, and just a ton of really nice cigars there. It doesn't have quite the upper premium, My Father, or Drew Estate brands, but he always has some little ones down at the bottom. And, you pick them up every once in a while, some unnamed sticks and what have you. But they all seem to kind of arrive at the same quality. And I'm just stressing that because they're all consistent. All the cheap ones I've smoked are consistent. This one's definitely a notch ahead, which is nice. This has milded out enough that I don't get any tarry taste anymore. I don't sense any pepper. I mean, if it's pepper, it's way back there. It's very, very mild. That might change, but so far, if you just want to suck on a stick and not have your head blown off, it's definitely a good starting point here so far. Now, hopefully my camera doesn't freak out here. It was giving me a little bit of a problem here, so I don't know what the deal is. I didn't change anything. There's something else going on here that's really nice, and I got done with the last review and I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't be trying to call out exact tastes, right? Because I'm not sure. And there's sometimes when you get butter, there's no question. When you get leather, there's no question. Tobacco, obviously, you can't just say you're getting a tobacco flavor because, of course, you're going to get tobacco. But there's varying grades of tobacco. And I think the best way to describe an experience is sort of like when you're using electronics or software, and you're like, what does this knob do? And especially if you're in a music studio, you're like, well, you'll be playing with some sound effects board or something like that, and you'll wonder, what's this do? And the way you figure it out is you slam the needle all the way to 10 or 11 sometimes, and then back to 0 and back to 10, and then you kind of figure out how the music sounds different, and then you kind of balance out wherever the hell you want it to be. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do with this taste reference, is to say, okay, a Macanudo is just as smooth Connecticut as it gets in this world, And then if you do, I'm trying to think of like the loudest one I usually smoke. Like an Excalibur or a punch. Again, like I said, they can be pretty hefty. I get all kinds of different punches. Then there's the Rocky Patel Platinum, which is also pretty heavy duty in terms of its strength content. So I think this is sort of a third the way up on strength of tobacco flavor, not strength in any type of dizziness or sickness. So the body, I should say, the body of the tobacco flavor is about a third the way up on the scale of, very loud, pronounced tobacco flavor. And again, cheap sticks, I think I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe this. When you use the knob analogy, and you go to 10, well, obviously very few things need to be slammed all the way to one side, right? So typically a lot of the settings on anything in life is right in the middle. And Sometimes that's a 0 point of effectiveness. Sometimes it's negative if you go below center and positive. So I think that's maybe what we say is the fine tobacco. And let's just use obsess on the CO first there because it's a great cigar. It's just a soft, beautiful tobacco flavor, right? Sort of like a My Father. If you crank it up, further than that, you're getting into the really kind of thicker, heavier strength tobacco flavors. And I think the cheapy ones are the ones that really get tarry and gross. And then way down on the bottom end of the scale, you get your Macanudos, which are just sort of like Brian said, token on air. And that's a pleasant experience too. Sometimes it's just the meditation of the whole experience. You got something you want to do, you want to look at your videos on your phone or whatever the hell, review the news, and you're just trying to really get a hint of the smell of tobacco, or taste, Wow. I'm going to tell you right now, that's becoming so mild that it's near a Macanudo. I mean, if Macanudo's at 1 on our little 1 to 10 scale of heavy-bodied tobacco, which just means totally smooth and chill, man, this is like, if that's a 1, this is like approaching a 3 at about an inch in, And what's interesting about this is I don't know if I got this at my formal smoke shop, and I don't know if they've had these the whole time. What's funny is when Brian reviewed it, I was like, oh, that's good. And he gave it a good review, and then I went and looked online, people, replying to it, and everybody had just great things to say about it. I mean, like lots of people. And so I'm now one of them. But I walked into my smoke shop and I saw them for the very first time. It's a very eccentric. It's like a blue packet. So the blue that's in this label, right? The packet's all blue, and mine had a three sticks in it, Churchill size, and it's got on my jeans here. So the ash went about an inch, which I have to say recently I've been buying some premium cigars and they don't have the ashing abilities, to keep your ash on, but. I think that we have a problem with packaging affecting our judgment on products in general, And, once you have a really good unboxing experience with some product, you don't want to go to the one that's just blister packed, You automatically feel like someone's trying to be chintzy with it. But in the end, maybe they're just saving money in the other techniques. But this is actually spending more money to put it in this little, I always call it the little bladder packet, But now they're starting to put all these premium cigars in these little one-off packets, and you'll see them at gas stations. And I just went to a mobile station this morning, and they had more cigars in there than I've seen at other stores. Walgreens has a whole assortment, but even my smoke shop had the ones at Walgreens, so it was kind of cool. The sun's starting to come out now. We'll see what happens here. Could probably hear the crows, right? Take this off of my boots here. It's Southern California, Orange County. It was about 53 when I checked the temperature before doing this. I waited about 10 minutes. I hit the button again. It was 51. I was like, how the hell did it just get colder? But I'm sure we're up in the 60s by now, probably about 60. So the sun's going to come out on us. Hopefully I don't get those bars on my face. You can tell I'm experimenting with the filtering. I got the black and white show, which is the Deep Thoughts show. And then I just want to make these a little bit more mystical looking, right? Brian Glenn got this amazing camera. I don't know what the hell it is, man, but he's got it cranked up to some incredible, like 4K, 60 frames per second sort of thing, if not 128. And he just looks unbelievable on there. Maybe one day I'll throw down the cash for that. You can tell just a massive smoke off this thing. I was smoking this just a tad faster than I would normally do. But it's great. I mean, it's just, I have no tarry flavor in my mouth, which has been synonymous with the cheap cigars. I'm trying to think of this one, there's the Camacho, and then there's a knockoff. I think it's like, my gas station has this one. It's called a Cuban, I think, but it looks like a Camacho. But it's another like $2 cigar, and it's pretty good. From time to time, I'll get one that's okay, but it does get to that tarry point where you look at the base, the opening, and it's just sort of like, it's collected a lot of the goo inside the cigar, which is fine. On that note, I know what we can talk about at the same time here. I got Long Beach Airport that way, so they fly them overhead. They're either going in this way or out that way. Wine. I'm not a huge wine connoisseur, but I've helped a couple. I've helped one of my buddies who was a rock star make his own wine, and since we're not selling anymore. But when he made that wine, it was actually a Christian Story wine, and which is fine wine. That guy is great, nice guy too. And he makes a couple other rocker wines like the Warrant wine. Which I forgot its name, but he makes a couple other boutique wines. And I'll tell you what, you might poo-poo these wines with these ridiculous looking labels, and they'll just take someone, and there's a Randy Rhoads wine, but these vineyards love these stars, and so they will create beautiful blends. And because the rockers themselves have typically consumed lots of alcohol in their lifetimes, they know a crappy wine versus a good wine. And then there's some guys that demand, they won't drink a fine beer. They'll drink like a Coors Light. Nothing wrong with Coors Light. Gives me a reflux, though. But anyway, I went to this big wine convention in San Francisco because we're promoting the wine. And it's one of these things, and I didn't know they did this. And I've been involved with the restaurants buying wine, and I knew the whole, the restaurant wine is different than the ones you can get in the stores, But this was a all-day event where we set up this booth with our wine, and the first, I guess, almost 2/3 of the day, if maybe it's half the day, I don't know, I feel like 2/3, the buyers come in who are going to sell it to restaurants, and they want to taste your wine or what have you. And it was kind of goofy that we were there, because it's not like, you're going to be at Morton's Steakhouse and buy, a rocker wine or something. But it does add a lot of credibility when they see it next to all the other wines, So when they see it next to all the other wines that particular vineyard makes, because well, maybe this is a cheap way to get a really good Chardonnay, or a cheap way to get a Cabernet or something like that. But anyway, what I learned there was phenomenal about wines. And a lot of you will already know this, but if you don't know this might be very interesting for you to know, because I was just thinking about the quality of tobacco. And we have all these worries about tobacco, the soot going in our mouth and causing cancer. And I'll tell you right now, scientifically speaking, the only thing I would imagine, there's probably two things that would contribute from a cigar standpoint. Remember, these aren't cigarettes. Cigarettes are made of pure paper, right? So cigarettes are made of the stuff this band is made out of. And when you open up a cigarette, when I was a kid, I used to think that was tobacco cut up inside the cigarette. It's not. It's paper that's been, like tissue paper that's been made at that density, and they soak it in this horrible chemical concoction where it's like 1,500 to 1,200 chemicals that also have tobacco in them. But they've mixed this to create addiction, and all that stuff causes cancer. But again, as long as the cancer takes 20 plus years to hit you, the FDA will always approve it, because whoever's approving it will never be in office by the time you try to come back and sue. And of course, these people are immune from what they approve. Go figure. But the two things I would imagine would be the carbon, which is sort of the cloud you see, and anything that displaces your blood sugar levels. If anything can get into your bloodstream, it's a pollutant. It's a particulate. You know, we drink alcohol because it thins our blood and our brain doesn't function very well, and it gives us a little bit of a high. Well, you know, the truth of the matter is that alcohol will always kill your liver. Every time it hits your liver, cells die. There's just no other way around it. And, you know, your arteries thin out because your blood thins, and so, you know, that makes your arteries get to the point where they no longer can provide enough blood to your organs. You end up having catastrophic organ failure sometimes. And you get brain damage because your brain is also trying to procreate and doesn't have enough blood to do it. So you get kind of dumb. You start repeating yourself a lot if you become an alcoholic. And I've seen this my whole life, unfortunately. Luckily, my family didn't drink much. You know, it was just when I got out into the real world and started meeting my friends and what have you, you know, and I've had a lot of friends pull out of it and get back to moderation, which is cool. And believe me, I'm not judging. Man, I'm telling you guys, this is like, again, if a Macanudo was a 10, this little guy right here is an 8. Easily an 8. The only reason why I wouldn't give it a 9 was I think there's a little bit of a taste in the wrapper of a Macanudo that's a little softer, and we need to give space there to rate this. But I mean, I don't know, man. This be an upper 80s cigar, you know. And again, I just pulled this out of a bag. Who the hell knows how long it's been in there? But the foot smoke, when you retrohale it, as it's kind of running around your head on the outside, and you pull it in and taste it, and the finishing taste, it's nice. The finishing taste is very short, but it's just pleasant, you know. I mean, this is the kind of cigar I'm going to smoke. I'm going to go in and take a shower, eat some breakfast, and go to work, and no one's going to, probably, unless I get all excited and exhale on them a lot, no one's going to know I've smoked today. It's going to be kind of cool. Okay, so wine. I got there, and you know, everyone knows that wine has different qualities, right? And I think a lot of us are hip to the way that they're making wines. But if you ever wondered why one wine will be $75 a bottle, and one wine can be $10 a bottle, and you take home the Walgreens $2 chuck, you know, which is now about $8. And, you know, you're drinking it, and you're like, yeah, it's okay. But when you do drink a nice wine, oh, my God, is it different, you know? But I started asking them, I said, you know, well, what's the deal? You know, how are they able to make wine that's really cheap and your wine costs more? Is it just you're more arrogant about your brand, and therefore you charge more, and people want to feel like they're posh by spending a lot of money on something? Some people buy cigars that just cost a lot of money, and they're not better than other cigars that are maybe, you know, like I've definitely smoked. Well, actually, no, you know what? I have to admit, the last one I smoked, the Liga Privada, that might be one of the nicest ones I've ever smoked in my life. But I definitely had $12 sticks and these $2 sticks. And sometimes like the 12 and the 8 are the same thing, you know. But anyway, they said that there's now a huge difference in the way that wines are made. And that this wasn't the case like 100 years ago. All wines were made correctly 100 years ago, even 30 years ago. It has to do with the aging process. Obviously, aging, aside from ingredients, is going to be the only way that you're going to rack up your costs, right? So you have wood aged, and you have like barrel aged, and then you have these I forgot what they call it. It's like steel barrel aged wines. What the hell do they call that? Well, the proper way to make a wine is to mix it all up, ferment it all down, and store it in a wood barrel of some sort. And the wood's going to bleed into the taste of the wine, and that's going to give you this beautiful flavor. But it takes a minimum amount of years just storing it in this, wood barrel for it to permeate the taste of the wine itself. And then there's also the stages of when they add sugar to the wine for that level of the fermentation. And then there's cheapy wines where they actually do them in steel barrels. And this is gross. And it really utterly impacted what wine I will drink now. They take wood and they burn it. Same kind of wood that the barrels are made of. In fact, they buy old barrels and they chop them up and they burn them. Like down to like carbonized chunks of wood. It still has wood in it, wood in the center, but it's kind of flame broiled on the outside. And they will shove inside this metal barrel this wood. And there's also a medium one where they do it in steel barrels for a short period of time. Then they put it in the wood barrels for the last half of the aging. So there's a middle one as well. And there's a damn name for it. I can't believe I didn't know I was going to talk about it. I would have looked it up. Thing just keeps moving along. So I'm nearing the halfway point on this. I'm definitely at the halfway point of what I'm going to smoke. And it's just it's got a little bit of that tobacco sooty flavor that you get from cheaper cigars, but just a hint. Maybe it'll get some more intense towards the backside of this, but again, it's more like a punch in terms of its finishing taste of tobacco level and that sort of thing. So we'll see. But anyway, about the wine, so they take this wood that's all burned up and they put it inside this steel barrel. And I was talking to them. I said, well, how do you serve that? And they go, oh, well, they strain it. They put all the wine through these huge filters to get all the toxins out of it, most of the toxins out of it. And then that's what you're buying in these $2 chucks. Yeah, it's like, okay, so you're getting a wine and you have a bunch of stuff in it. And they said that a lot of reason why people have headaches, and there's all these other rumors why you have headaches, and I forgot the stuff they talk about. It's not the pectin, but there's some other thing. They go, it's really just all this toxic chemicals inside the wine that's giving all these people these bad experiences. And they said, that's why people don't understand how, the rich people can, drink wine all the time, or foreign countries that don't do this technique, like Spain and Italy, where they drink it with lunch. Of course, they're drinking like a blush, right? They're drinking something that's not quite as syrupy as our stuff. They said these people don't get any headaches. They don't get all messed up. They don't have hangovers. They don't get massively dehydrated. And that's why they can drink it every day, So, so then I asked him, I said, well, where's the cutoff? How do you know which one's which without, turning around the bottle and trying to figure out how they age it? And they go, well, they'll never tell you how they age it unless it's a fine wine, and then you'll know. But they said around, the woman I was with was interestingly a diabetic. And she was overweight too, which was interesting. It was like, and she was drinking tons of wine. I said, well, how do you do that? We're talking about a lot of calories of sugar going into your system, and you're diabetic. How do you do this? Isn't this going to put your insulin levels in peril? And she said, well, I can drink fine wines, but I can't drink this cheap stuff. And she says it all has to do with when they add the sugar. They add it later in the fermentation process. And, my grandfather made wine my whole life. And I can't remember his process. And I never really, he showed it to me a couple times, but never as a, son, you should take this over. He should have. I should have done that. Because this dude could make wine out of anything. It was always delicious. And he always made like really dry whites as well, which I love a dry wine. So I usually drink champagne if I want a dry experience. But anyway. um, I toured around with this woman who knew everybody. She had sold wine for everyone. This is before the pedestrians came in around 1 o'clock or so, and they were allowed to pay a certain amount of money. I think it was $40, and then you could do all the tastings and stuff. And I know a bunch of you have done this, but it was my first time. And so, we went by the Rothschild booth and a bunch of other stuff. We're drinking like these little sippers of $400 wine, which is amazing. And of course, again, it goes down like the most soft, decadent wine I've ever tasted in my life, And so anyway, we went to dinner that night, and the Christian Story wine is great as well. I don't know if you guys have ever consumed this. And I'm pretty sure he's still in business. I think he had to, he had a couple points where he had to refinance a few things, and we weren't quite sure if he was going to make it. But his bottles, he actually has his bottles, they're made custom. They're very, very thick bottles, unlike most wine bottles. You can't really see through them. And he's got like when you press the label on with a wax label, the big thing of wax, his wax label is part of the glass. And so he has these beautiful bottles made. And so if you ever see a bottle that's sort of, it tapers at the bottom in a fairly pronounced way, and you have this little sort of wax imprint in the glass. It's there's no wax, it's all glass, but it's like a mold of a wax imprint. That's usually a Christian Story bottle. And I don't know if there's 10 other people that do that, but I'd never seen it before. Well, that night we were at dinner, and it was always cool to hang out with these people that have been in it their whole life, right? This guy had been in this forever. And they ordered this other wine. I wouldn't know the name. I took a picture of the bottle, but even if I was staring at the picture, I wouldn't be able to pronounce it. But it was about a $75 bottle of wine. And I think it was about 4 of us consuming this, and it was unbelievable. It was just the finest freaking wine. And like they said, we consumed this, and must have been a fairly big bottle, because I think we were all getting a pretty deep pour on this thing. But it was not like we're getting 10 glasses to test out the hangover theory, but it was just, you just took one sip of it and you're like, oh my God, this is a completely different experience than any of the crap I've been drinking my whole life. And I don't think in my entire life in the wine category I'd ever had any amazing wines. I had tons of amazing champagnes, your Dom Perignon and that kind of stuff. Which first time I drank Dom, it was skunky to me. It just was way too twangy. I don't know. I was probably just a peasant, but I've drank it since then. I know it's definitely a wonderful champagne. But anyway, so they basically distinguished the two for me, and I guess the next level up, and I think the wine that we were selling, our rocker wine, was a 50-50 aging process, which I guess is you still ferment it exactly the way, adding the sugar late, which I'm just repeating what I heard, which makes it consumable by those who need to watch their sugar intake. I don't know if it actually has less sugar in it or the state of the sugar is a different way. And there's a bunch of you just screaming at the screen, yes, no, you're full of shit. But man, that's just a nice little stick, man. I'm actually really, really surprised and happy for the first time buying a cheaper stick. Again, this is, I probably paid too much for it. I think I paid $8.79 for 3, and this is from my smoke shop, which always marks everything up. So I'm pretty sure you could get these for cheaper. If you get a bundle of them, I'm sure they're nothing. But you know what's weird, too, is like that Cohiba that I told you about. Cohiba is a very trusted brand. CO fans smoke them all the time. And the normal sticks are $7 to $8 minimum. When I bought that sample pack, again, it was all the floor clippings. It was very evidently, you could just look into the front or the back, and you could just see it was a bunch of little, almost like cigarette, little fibers in there, except it was tobacco for real, and it smoked funky. But this is just like a normal old smoke. Ash is about 1 inch a pop before it falls off, unless you're meandering around like me, and you can knock it off a little sooner. But so far, it's really densely packed ash. The kernel seems to be doing really well. I've never had to correct this the whole time, not even remotely. It's not quite, perfect razor burn, but I had to get up and fix the camera, so maybe I I made a little mistake there. And I will say that I've noticed something that I haven't heard mentioned. Two things about the wind and about just holding a cigar in a particular orientation, right? Look at that smoke. It smells amazing. Like, one of the things I love the most about a cigar experience is the foot smoke. Just holding this in proximity to my nose, just to get the wrapper burn and the blend inside. I'm starting to make the ash fall off here. It's just, that's one of the things I love, let alone the taste, right? In fact, before I even knew how to taste, it was the foot smoke that really made me want to smoke. It was interesting. But anyway, two things I've noticed, and I haven't heard Brian mention it or anybody mention it, which is on a windy day. I heard people complain about windy day smoking, and you might just assume very accurately, you pull oxygen through the back here to make the ash go down. The cherry burn your cigar down, right? Creates this effect. All right. Now, if you're standing there and the wind is fairly consistently hitting one side of your body, one side of the cigar, and you don't rotate this, you don't move it, you'll notice that you'll get a faster burn on that side of the cigar. It's interesting. We have Santa Ana winds here, and I noticed it on those days. I could just watch the cigar, and now I know to rotate it in my hand like this, and you're losing your cigar wrapper to the wind, and so you're losing part of the burn timing on this thing. So it might be nice to grab a Churchill size when you want to smoke in the wind. That way, when it burns faster, you're okay. And you might want to smoke a JM cigar. That way, when it burns quicker, you're not heartbroken that your Macanudo, fizzled out like a fuse, right? Oh, but the other one is orientation on the cherry. Now, I bet a bunch of you guys know this, and I'm just new to the club, which I am. But I notice if I hold my cigar straight up like this, it burns more evenly and probably mathematically slightly longer than if I were to hold it tilted down like this. I'm talking to my buddies. I'm just like, hey, I'm pointing it down. Because if you think about it, the heat's going to go up no matter how you orientate the cigar. So if you start orientating, again, I'm making up words here. You guys can write these down, put them in a calendar. The vector of heat's going to be right there. It's always going to go up. And so I'm actually going to be roasting the inside of this cigar if I orientate it like this. Whereas if I just chill out and hold up like this, it's just going to go straight out the top. So you're going to get the slowest burn and probably the longest ash just holding it straight up like this. But again, I've never heard anybody talk about it, and I've never seen anyone smoke and really try to do this to it. So I think there's a tiny factor of that sometimes. And I think if you have a stick that's burning quick with a short filler, it's probably more imperative that you maintain some sort of regiment, lest you lose your cigar faster. Wow. Right there, because we're right in the center of this thing. I'm telling you, I think I get a little bit of cocoa. A hint of cocoa. I'm not getting, let me see here. On the Retro Hill, it's just so mild. It's nice. It's fairly a dark wrapper for such a mild burn, for such a mild body. And I don't feel anything strength-wise. That's the nice thing. I haven't had one buzzy moment in this thing. And, of course, no matter what you're smoking towards the end, you're really, whatever cycle's going on inside the burning process of the tobacco intake, it starts to get a lot heavier towards the end here. And again, if I were to change anything about this cigar at all, I try to find a label that doesn't look cheap. This could be the $2 chuck of cigars if they just maybe blow the label out a bit more like a South American piece of money, you know. I would gladly design a new label, a new band. I just always feel like, this is like a 2-color print on this thing. I've done a lot of T-shirt designs in my lifetime where I had to design for, a limited amount of colors because of the print. And I think now all that's moot, But I think there are T-shirt manufacturers that still have the old silk screening techniques, even if it's automated in a computer. And it's really tough when you want to make something look sexy with a few colors. And sometimes you can get them to print a color on top of another color in a variable density, so that you can get you can maybe get a green out of this. If you could lay down some a lighter blue on top of a yellow, maybe you can mix up a different color. It's also printed on paper that's really smooth and thick, which I think the CO one is actually fairly smooth and thick, but it just has a nice kind of regal band to it. There's nothing that, like Brian was talking about the other day, that there's these little, especially on a My Father and a few other brands, they have these little velvet tips on them. And he said that when you buy a stick in Canada, it costs so damn much for a stick. Like this stick might cost $25 in Canada just because of all their totalitarian tyranny tax that they try to solve the whole world through taxing everybody's money. Again, it's a really sad bummer that cigarettes are synonymous with cigars in so many people's mind. Any dude who smokes a cigar and tries to inhale it, they just turn purple and they're like, never again will I ever touch a cigar. And I have to say, I smoked a cigar at like 9 or 10 years old, and I was totally smoking cigarettes at the time. I tried to inhale it, and I turned purple, and I was like, I will never touch one of those things again. So when I started smoking in 2009, it was like I went from zero smoking at all, anything in my life. I stopped smoking when I was a child, and I started puffing on these guys. I was doing some Connecticut's. It was I was helping to sell one. The hell was its name? It was Christ, I can't remember the damn name of it. It's a guy who sells cigars down in San Juan Capistrano. Kind of an odd fellow. Nice cigars, but I tried to sell them with him. So I went to Laughlin in Nevada at a biker convention, and we had a little booth there, and so it was a buddy of mine and I doing cigars. And if I'd known, man, that I was because I was smoking all day, I was doing Connecticut's all day, and I would have loved to have had that opportunity. This knowledge of cigars, I would have been token on some of the better ones, but yeah, we needed to push the scent out to everyone so they would know where to get these things. And there's a few other cigar places there, but yeah, when I learned I wasn't supposed to inhale, it all got better, and yeah, good Connecticut's just a beautiful thing when it happens. And then you hear all these tall tales about how, if the wrapper's dark, that it's going to be really heavy, and if it's light, you're going to be okay. It's definitely the case with lighter wrappers. I've noticed. I haven't had a full strength Connecticut before. I've never had a buzz off a Connecticut wrapper, but I definitely smoked, chocolate black cigars and never had a single buzz either. So what I love about it is that the manufacturers seem to understand that that's where people are. They don't want a bunch of strength. And so you can almost close your eyes these days and grab a cigar and not worry about its strength. And when these jets come in for landing sometimes, it's always the private G5s coming in from San Diego. Little trivia piece about Orange County and Southern California in general. When celebrities want to leave LA, they typically want the most anonymous exit and egress and ingress, out of the area. They don't want a bunch of fans. If you ever see like a movie star walking through LAX and they're being hassled by the paparazzi, they're doing that on purpose, okay? Because no celebrity ever has to hit the main terminals. They just don't. There's always a back entrance for these folks. And in fact, if you ever drive by an airport anywhere in a major city, you'll find, maybe not the Midwest, but you'll find all these little annexy tarmac loading docks, even for big jets, and that's where celebrities pull their SUVs in. They go through the same pat down, even if I think even if it's a private jet, but I could be wrong about that. But one of the most famous airports where celebrities will come from LA. I mean, they'll come from Hollywood and drive all the way down to what's they call it the SNA when you look it up on the airport, booking, but it's actually John Wayne Airport down here. It's a beautiful little airport. It's tiny, but they have one of the best VIP loading areas, as I'm told. You can see them. They look normal, where celebs can get on and off really quickly. And we're not very densely packed population-wise down here, so it helps as well. Now, the other big one is Burbank up there, but Burbank is a lot more busy, a lot more densely packed in North Hollywood. It's like North Hollywood and Burbank just literally kiss right at the airport. And as I understand it, it's not as... I mean, I've flown into Burbank several times, but it's sort of a... it's an older airport, let's just put it that way. It's endearing, it's like going into the whole Honolulu and their older terminals. Not quite as cool as Honolulu, but sort of like that. A band came off, no problem. Again, construction, I mean, just look at that. It's been ashing about every 3/4 of an inch, and probably because I'm moving around so damn much. Otherwise, it's fine. But yeah, so they come down here and they fly out. And so we have a huge private jet group of folks down here because of their chartering, And I guess, the other one is that a lot of the millionaires and billionaires like to use John Wayne to get in and out as well. So they'll just limo back up to L.A. And usually when you're going from Orange County into L.A., half the day it's a breeze to drive in. People always giving crap about LA traffic. Yeah, okay, so LA traffic goes something like this. LA, it's a gigantic place. When they ask about the population of Los Angeles, it always gets skewed because there's Los Angeles County, which is essentially the heart of Los Angeles, but it's surrounded by all these other counties that are the spokes around L.A. County. And I'm in Orange County, so if you go south of L.A. County, you hit Long Beach County, and then you hit, I think that's the next one down, and then you hit Orange County. And Orange County is massive, right? Less populated, but huge. So when you're in Los Angeles, if you ever come out here, here's your clue on how to get around. Know that the top third of Los Angeles, especially, sort of around your Santa Monica Boulevard and up to maybe like Beverly Hills, Brentwood area, before you bump into Ventura County that's north, that whole area, all the way to the coast, all the way to the Pacific, is a very densely packed population. And it's pretty much every income bracket that you could possibly go into. The further east you go, it's not considered East LA yet. That's towards the south, right? But the further east you go, you have a lot of low-income housing and where all the kind of the workers that serve the richer people live. And so as soon as if you have to travel up in that area, and the Hollywood Hills are up in that area too. You have kind of your West Hollywood and your North Hollywood. I have friends of mine that live like maybe 10 miles, if even that, maybe 8 miles from work. And it takes them 45 minutes to drive that 8 miles. And that's why I think, you're not killing it if you got this, $10 million home on the hill, but it takes 45 minutes to get to work, no matter if you're Steven Spielberg or Katzenberg, like, what's the point? Get a helicopter. But the lower part of Los Angeles starts to become more industrial, and that's where towards the bottom you have your Watts, Compton, and your East LA. But it's a lot of industrial manufacturing down there, a lot of huge power lines going across that area. Of course, all the coastal regions are amazing, right? But the coastal regions also get very, very dense. When the millionaires push in, you could literally reach out your bathroom window half the time and touch the house next to you. It's crazy what they pay a lot of money for. But when you get down to Orange, I'm going to overlay back on this what times to go, but pretty much all day long, that northern region is just miserable. No matter what time of day it is, maybe after midnight it's a little bit better. Maybe, 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, you're okay. But I've come home at all kinds of hours, and it can get dense. It's crazy how early this all stack up, Long Beach County, it's a weird county because it contains, obviously, Long Beach, the city. Long Beach has got this kind of affluent layer that's up against the ocean, and then you kind of go in, and it sort of divides. You have these hot regions where it's sort of ghetto, very, very dangerous areas, and then you might go in a couple more blocks and you find these really affluent areas, very amazing homes. And typically the crime rate's pretty bad because they know where to go to steal stuff. Buddies of mine who've owned really nice homes in there have had their houses broken into, and they end up freaking out and moving someplace else. Then when you get down to Orange County, you start bumping into Seal Beach, Sunset, Huntington Beach, where I am. Then you bump into, there's a few other cities, Costa Mesa, Newport Beach, Irvine, and we're I think very similar to the way that Ventura County is populated. Now, Ventura County is also super massive, and you have to go through a lot of hills to get up to the kind of more populated areas. You'll go through Woodland Hills and Westlake and Agora, very loosely packed areas of fairly affluent people. And so, again, you start running into your Testarossas and your Lamborghinis and your Ferraris. Down here, it's the same exact way. But people obviously go into the city to get their jobs and get their money, and then they come out of the city at night. So the interesting thing is, if you can checker your commute to be the opposite or orientation, it's like no one's on the highway. It's crazy. And one of the first time I ever noticed that I was going to see a movie premiere in the Academy Theater, and my buddies were all coming down from all the special effects areas and video game companies and movie studio companies, and they're all coming in to see the premiere, and I'm coming up from Orange County. And I think I was seeing Tron Legacy. It was the director, Joe Kosinski, was there, and it wasn't like the world premiere. It was just a premiere. It might even it was actually shown the night before it actually released or something like that. And so it's where all the heads come together, and we have we show the film, and then everyone does a panel up on the stage, and we can ask all these questions. And I did several at the DGA too, which is the Directors Guild of Association, which is in the heart of Hollywood, just literally down the street from the Mann's Chinese Theater towards the west. And but I could get there in about 35 to 40 minutes from Orange County, which is a good 35 miles straight up and some change. And I would be there right on time, by just wiggling up, because no one was in front of me. But my friends, who are literally 4 to 8 miles away, they're taking 30 to 40 minutes to get there. And I beat all my friends to this premiere. It was really weird. And so, you start kind of asking questions of, if time is money, and if living your life is something you really want to do and really create things, being in a car forever just seems crazy, Consequently, obviously the more time you spend in a car, the more you have to get a nice car to make that sort of enjoyable. You want the seats to be nice, you want the environment, the stereo to be nice. And the more you kind of get out of that grind, you can kind of reduce your car down to like just a to-from kind of vehicle that looks nice, Now, this area too is where a lot of celebrities actually end up living, sort of when things calm down. And, when you have to do a lot of casting calls and that kind of stuff, you want to be really close to the studios. And so you want to live up in those areas. And so everyone typically spends a lot of their initial capital that they make in the industry to stay up next to the industry. And that's just something you have to do, But there's a morning commute into LA. So if you're coming here as a tourist, the best thing to do is sort of wait till about 10 o'clock. And then you can pretty much between 10 and 2 o'clock with a little surge in lunchtime. But typically people don't travel tremendously far distances to eat lunch. So it's always regional. So if you're next to a big industrial area, you might have a regional group of people that run out to get food. But, it's just like any town at noon, But usually between 10 and 2, it's amazing how quickly you can get into Los Angeles from Orange County or from Ventura County down to Los Angeles. But you need to get your ass out of LA by about 2:30, and then you'll be okay. If you think about a mile a minute at 60 miles an hour, you can usually bank your time somewhere in that region. But after 3 o'clock, it's just a crapshoot. If you try to leave around 3:30, you're definitely going to take what could be a 35 to 45 minute commute to your home, and it'll be 2 hours easy, If you're a tourist, hopefully you're going to destinations and plopping yourself into those destinations early enough that you're staying there until all the traffic goes away. And the big attractions in Los Angeles are sort of, it depends on your age and depends on what you like. What we find when we live here in Los Angeles and the relatives come out or friends come out, they always want to go off to some of the worst areas. You just have to do it because they haven't seen these things before. I actually have a sort of a friend of a friend who owns the Man's Chinese Theater. He was one of the co-producers on Tron, and you sort of want to see the Man's Chinese Theater just because there's all the footprints on the ground. But what you need to understand about the footprints and the handprints and all those writings and stuff is they're super duper popular ones. They never move, but these things are they don't look like they're movable. It's crazy, but they are. But they actually swap these blocks out every once in a while because there's so many of them. They can't keep them. They need like a field to put them all in there. So at night or some point in time, they swap these things out. Probably, I don't know how often they do it actually. Well, what Man's Chinese Theater has turned into is this absolute odyssey of crazy, When I got here in 87, it was the normal old Man's Chinese Theater that you would go to, and the tourists are all just walking around. Everyone's appreciating all these crazy, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger's handprints and footprints, and for some reason, if your feet are bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger, you feel like more like a man, which is funny. But nowadays they have people dressed in costumes, and it's a bunch of homeless people. A lot of times, no, they're not. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. They're not exactly homeless. There are some homeless people down there doing this, but they'll go down to a local kind of Halloween costume shop, and they just get. Some of them have really nice outfits, and some of them, probably about at least 50%, look atrocious in these things. They've simply gone down and they've put on an outfit that covers them head to toe, and they don't really act out the role, but they want you to pay money to pose with them. And it's part of a journey. It's cool if you've never done it before. Knock yourself out. But there's some people down there that look like these folks. There's a guy down there that looks like Orlando Bloom, or at least there was. And this kid showed up. I swear to God, he was like just a couple percentage off from Orlando's jeans. And he dressed up like the elf from The Hobbit and, I guess Lord of the Rings at the time I last saw him. And so you can have some really cool little shots, especially from a different state. It's just cool. You got to go do it, and so you have to do it. But they also have, the Wax Museum down there, which used to be at this warehouse somewhere in Burbank or Hollywood, and it was much better, much larger. And now, so you go down. It's kind of silly, but again, it's one of these things. So you do all those kind of things for an evening. And there's a bunch of normal commercialized food down there, and there's some fairly unique pizza places. Although I got kind of depressed because the pizza claims to be like a New York style pizza. It's just really bland marinara. It's like there's no oregano in the sauce, and so it's just like eating cardboard. Which is sort of sadly the way New York has turned into as well. I went all over New York last time I was there trying to find my buddy. His family had 65 pizzerias in New York and Jersey, and he came out here and started a pizza place, and the pizza's just like phenomenal. Like, it's all New Yorkers come in, and they're coming to Huntington Beach to a place that used to be called Brooklyn Pizza. And they come in all cocky, there's no way at Huntington Beach this guy could pizza. Little did they know, they walked into the best pizza place on planet Earth, and I watched these people take a bite of this pizza. You can tell I'm hungry. And they take a bite and start chewing. And then they would always pull the pizza away from their hand. This is what I did too. Pull it away from their head, and they're looking like, oh my God. That kind of flavor of a pizza. And it's sort of what it used to be when they were kids, I think. But the other attractions here are Venice Beach. LA Story is a really cool place, really cool movie just to see how it's all worked out. But Venice is great. You get a bunch of stuff in there. But Disneyland is also a big one down here in Anaheim. And just remember, Walt Disney only went to Disneyland. He never went to any other Disney parks because they didn't exist. So his handprints, his fingerprints are all over Disneyland. So anyway, my camera's acting weird, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this thing up, and hopefully I can stitch this all together. And this has been all for nothing. It's going to be really hard to sync up the audio to this thing. This is a great little cigar. This is worth every dollar you're going to spend on this thing, which is probably $2.50 a pop. So highly recommend this. I'd say on a cynical day, I give this an 80%. I think honestly on a good day, I give it like an 85. We have to reserve those higher numbers for those premium smokes, but this is really nice. I was just super duper shocked. So this is a JM's cigar. It's a Nicaraguan cigar. I got it in a 3-pack of Churchill's for about $8.70, and it's great. So I'm going to continue talking now, and if my camera dies, so be it. It keeps telling me my recording is canceled. What the hell does that mean? But I go into the look at the footage, and it's actually in there, so I can find out what's going on. Let's see. If you're into the more artsy stuff in Los Angeles, there's definitely the Griffith, But go to the Griffith Observatory, and you'll luck out. The J. Paul Getty Museum, it's sort of like going to any museum, but it's got a bunch of cool stuff you probably don't have in your local area, because J. Paul Getty was this wild millionaire who never came to Los Angeles in his lifetime. He built the whole thing using video cameras, what we call the Villa, which was his first place over in Malibu. And he was way dead before they built this gigantic one on the 405. But just about Disneyland, there's 2 parks there now. It's California Adventure and Disneyland. Excellent parks, man. Excellent. It's about $140 for the hopper ticket for one day per person. I think maybe $20 less for the kids. You really need 1 day per park if you want to do it right, but you can pull it off in 2 days. Just you won't get all your money's worth. But again, it's like $90 to $100 for one park, so you're getting the next park for almost nothing anyway. So make sure and get in there and take a look. My recommendation for rides: Star Tours, Space Mountain, Pirates of the Caribbean, Splash Mountain if you don't mind getting a little bit wet, Thunder Mountain if you like a really wild rustic roller coaster. And if you got little kids, they redid the Peter Pan ride. They redid It's a Small World. They have a little Finding Nemo submarine ride, which is pretty cool, over in California Park. The crazy mag lift roller coaster is called Screamin'. There's a bit of a loop in there that always bangs my neck, so they have these pads that are right next to your glasses, and so if you bang your head back and forth, it actually screws up your head a little bit. There's a really cool Muppet theater right in there. There's a good restaurant with alcohol in the Vineyard area. They have the Cars ride, which is phenomenal. They have the whole Cars City in there, which is pretty cool. They've redone the entire entry to be 1928 Walt Disney era. If you want to get ice cream, go to California Park and get it there. Because if you get it in the main street, it's the same exact ice cream, but the lines are really long in that one. So go to California Park. Much bigger. Lines are a fourth the size. It's pretty cool. But I'm trying to think of the restaurant in the middle called the Blue Bayou. No, wait a minute. That's by the hell is it? No, it's Ariel's Grotto. Excuse me. Ariel's Grotto is in the center of California Park. Great drinks, great food. It's really for the grown-ups, but the kids will find enough food to eat as well. If you want to get a little bit of buzz, go there. That's where the employees go to get the big drinks. It's really amazing. There is the Blue Bayou, which is this fancy restaurant, which if you go to Pirates of the Caribbean, you're going to go on the ride and you'll see the restaurant off to your right. Just make one note before you go in there. Smell the air. Ride the ride and smell the air, okay? If the air is very swampy because the water hasn't been recycled recently, when you eat your food, you're going to be about $100 out for 2 people easily. You're going to be smelling the swamp air while you're eating. And when that happens, no matter how much that steak costs, you're going to be basically eating what you're smelling. So just be careful with that one too. But they've really cleaned up the park a lot. I don't like the Matterhorn because I think it's really rough on your body. They've made the cars bigger, and so the turns don't really work that way. You get all shaken up inside. But if you have never gone, you might want to go just to say you've done it. But just brace yourself. It's going to be a little bit of a rough ride. There's a ton of other stuff at the parks, but those are my favorite ones if you're an adult. Even if you're a kid, Peter Pan ride's amazing. They redid it, and it's a small roll, which my God, what adult wants to go to that more than once in their lifetime? They've redone the whole thing. It's pretty damn cool. But again, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording because this thing is being fussy. So pray to the cigar gods that I can get this thing all edited together. If I did, let me tell you, it's been a labor of love. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next review. Over now.
Have a drink on me. Have a drink.